You ever try breaking something that refuses to crack? You hit it harder, again and again, but it doesn't break. It absorbs, it adapts, it grows stronger. That is India. The West has tried everything: colonization, exploitation, stereotyping, economic pressure, cultural dilution, and guess what? India didn't just survive, it reinvented the rules. Right now, while you're scrolling, watching, and wondering whether India is just catching up, the truth is it's already outpacing, outlasting, and outthinking the very systems that once tried to keep it down. And if you think this is just another speech hyping a country, stop, because I'm about to show you why India isn't just another rising nation. It's the one place the West can't beat. By the time we're done here, you'll understand why empires fall, but civilizations, like India, bend and bounce back. Why every tactic used against India, cultural, economic, political backfires. And why, in a world full of noise, India is quietly rewriting power dynamics. So, if you're someone who thinks in headlines, buckle up, because this is the real headline the world doesn't want you to read. India is unbreakable, and the West knows it. You can't talk about India without talking about its timeline, and it's not a short one. India isn't a 200-year-old country. It's not. Even 1,000 years old. India is a 50-year-old civilization that has stood taller than time, more persistent than any empire, and more unshakable than any modern state. And that right, there is what the West can't defeat: resilience forged in centuries of pressure. Let's go back. India was home to one of the world's first urban cultures, the Indus Valley civilization. While Europe was still in tribal mode, cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were showcasing planned roads, sewage systems, trade, routes, and mathematics. India was not just existing, it was thriving. But history didn't go easy on India. Wave after wave of invaders came. Persians, Greeks, Huns, Mongols, Mughals, and the British. Any one of these could have erased a weaker civilization. They didn't just try to conquer land, they tried to erase identity, rewrite culture, impose language, religion, and worldviews. But here's what's wild. India didn't resist change. It absorbed it, it didn't get crushed. It expanded, and it never forgot who it was. While Rome burned, kingdoms in India were building temples carved out of mountain. Universities like Nalanda attracting scholars from Asia, and mathematicians like Aryabhata laying the foundation for the very numbers the West uses today. Zero that came from India. Decimal system, India, chess, yoga, Ayurveda. India. This isn't trivia. This is cultural. Infrastructure, you don't defeat a nation. That has outlived everything from emperors to ideology. Then came colonialism. Arguably the most brutal test of all. The British Raj didn't just loot India. It aimed to fracture it from within, divide and rule, drain wealth, strip confidence. And yet, even under foreign rule, India sparked revolutions, nonviolent and philosophical ones that shook the world. Gandhi didn't just fight for India. He changed the meaning of resistance across the globe. He turned simplicity into strategy. He turned silence into a weapon. Now ask yourself, what other nation can claim that? Fast forward to today. India is still dealing with poverty, complexity, and contradictions. It doesn't hide from them. It works through them. Unlike sanitized narratives of the West, India's growth is messy, real, and incredibly human. But its people, they Don't give up. You'll see a child in a village learning coding on a second-hand phone, a farmer using solar apps, a grandmother debating politics sharper than a TV panelist. That's not chaos. That's resilience on display. Every time the world thinks India's down, it rises. When partition shattered the country, India built a democracy overnight. When famine hit, it became a net food exporter. When nuclear powers flexed, India quietly became one. When the West dominated tech, India built a space program on a shoestring and sent a satellite to Mars, cheaper than the cost of a Hollywood movie. You can't beat a nation like that because you don't know where its strength comes from. It doesn't come from machines or missiles or media. It comes from memory. India remembers every empire that rose and fell. It remembers the lessons, the pain, the pride. That's why no foreign narrative can stick. No pressure tactic works for long because you're not dealing with a new nation. You're dealing with an ancient mindset in a modern body. And that's exactly what the West didn't expect. A country that carries 5-0 years of survival instinct into every negotiation, every innovation, and every challenge. That's not soft power. That's indestructible power. India may look like it's still developing on the outside, but on the inside, it's battle tested. And that's why the West can't defeat India. In today's world, we're often told that power comes from tanks, jets, and nuclear missiles. But let's be honest, true power, the kind that wins in the long run, doesn't come from domination. It comes from influence, intellect, and ideas. And that's where India plays a different game altogether. For centuries, the West has measured power with military might. Conquer, occupy, control. But India wins with the mind. This isn't just spiritual talk. This is strategic. Intelligence, philosophical depth, and intellectual resilience that has quietly outmaneuvered empires without firing a bullet. Let's break this down. India's real arsenal is intellectual depth. Indian civilization has always prioritized knowledge over conquest. While much of the world was expanding territories, India was expanding consciousness. The Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Buddhist philosophies, these weren't just religious texts. They were manuals on human behavior, leadership, ethics, and mental strength. And they spread not through wars, but through wisdom. You think about how Buddhism reached China, Japan, Southeast Asia, not with armies, but with monks. That's soft power on a scale the modern West didn't even recognize until recently. Fast forward to today. India doesn't need to launch aircraft carriers to get global attention. It exports ideas, innovation, and intellectual capital. Silicon Valley wouldn't be what it is without Indian engineers, CEOs, and technologists. Google, Microsoft, Adobe, IBM, all led by people with Indian roots. That's not a fluke. That's what happens when a culture values education not as a path to power, but as a path to self-realization. And while the West often leverages intelligence for strategic dominance, India cultivates it for resilience. The education culture, more than degrees, in Indian homes education is not a lifestyle choice. It's a legacy from ancient Gurukuls to modern IITs. India has built institutions that produce deep thinkers and solution makers, not just workers. Think about this: with a fraction of the military budget of the West, India has built a space program that reached Mars on its first attempt and did it for less than the cost of gravity. The movie developed one of the most sophisticated digital ID systems in the world. Aadhaar, covering over 1 billion people, became the pharmacy of the world, producing affordable vaccines and life-saving drugs for developing nations, not for profit, but for purpose. This is mind over might, thought over threat, strategic nonviolence, a masterclass in power. Let's talk about India's most powerful intellectual export, nonviolent resistance. The West saw revolution as armed conflict. India rewrote the play's script. Gandhi Sacha wasn't just moral, it was tactically genius. It exposed the brutality of the British without ever picking up a weapon. It cornered an empire by forcing it to confront its own hypocrisy. To this day, the techniques used in civil rights, movements, freedom struggles, and political protests around the world trace back to Indian philosophy. What kind of mind invents that? One that doesn't believe in defeating the enemy physically, but transforming the game itself. Modern diplomacy, India's quiet. Strength, India doesn't chase headlines. It doesn't posture on global stages the way some powers do. Instead, it builds alliances quietly, offers humanitarian aid globally, and plays the long game. It doesn't get bullied, it doesn't bully others, whether it's its firm stance with China or balanced diplomacy with the US and Russia. India keeps one thing clear: sovereignty isn't negotiable, but peace is always preferred, and that confuses the West because India doesn't follow the classic playbook of force, fear, and firepower. It plays chess when others are throwing punches. It educates, elevates, and evolves, and that makes it a far more powerful and unpredictable force than any army can measure. Here's the final truth. The West can build stronger armies, faster missiles, bigger defense budgets, but they still won't beat India because India isn't fighting the same battle. India is mastering the battlefield of ideas, of innovation, of identity. This is a country that's taught the world how to think, not just how to fight. And that is why India remains undefeatable. Not because it flexes its military muscle, but because it plays the most powerful card of all, the mind. At first glance, India looks like a paradox. It has 22 official languages, Urdu, 0 distinct ethnic groups, every major world religion, and a kaleidoscope of customs, dress, diets, and traditions. It's loud, layered, and full of contradiction, and yet it works. Not in the sanitized linear way. Western systems are designed to work, but in a way that's organic, adaptive, and above all, cohesive. That's the miracle the West can't replicate and certainly can't defeat. In the West, even a slight ideological divide can tear societies apart. Élections divide families, racial, cultural, and political differences polarize entire populations. But India live